Hi, and welcome to the Ocean Tech Sessions, the podcast series that explores the latest in subsea innovation, business, and technology. I'm Moray Melhuish, your host for today, and I've spent 17 years working in subsea and offshore technologies across the energy transition. I'm proud to say that this episode 2 has been sponsored by our friends at Aquatech Group, the leader in subsea wireless instrumentation. Today we have an outstanding offshore entrepreneur for you, someone who has taken a very small, niche sonar rental business from the southeast of England and grown that to being a global presence in offshore and subsea projects worldwide. The founder today, Scott Johnstone, is somebody I've known and admired for at least 10 years now. We'll dive into his journey, understand his inspiration and motivation, and find out what it's like to finally scale and exit a business in this space. So Scott Johnston's our entrepreneur for today, the founder and former chief executive of STR, Subsea Technology and Rental. So Scott, welcome to the Ocean Tech Sessions. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Murray. It's an honour to be invited to do my first ever podcast interview.
Brilliant. So Scott, let's start at the beginning. So first of all, in this first segment, I'd like to talk a little bit about the companies you've been involved with and your journey through those. So can you take us back to the beginning? What first drew you into the subsea industry?
Well, I think being a local lad from Aberdeen, and I grew up in the 80s, and the buzz was the offshore industry, and I lived out in Blackdog, and the helicopters used to fly over the house, and I think, that felt exciting, and it was always an industry that I think I was going to end up in, the oil industry. I wouldn't say subsea, I wouldn't say offshore in a boat, but you think platforms and these things. I served an electrical electronic apprenticeship when I left school, but with a view that I would get my time served and learn some skills, and then look to transverse into the oil and gas industry with those skills, and started offshore.
Great. And you recently exited STR Subsea, which is a fairly major offshore equipment rental business. Tell us about your journey towards starting that up then, from finishing your apprenticeship through to exiting STR.
The journey into subsea rentals started actually with a company called Dynamic Positioning Services. It was known as DPS, which was acquired by Triton Group, which became Forum between 2008 and 2010. Post serving apprenticeship, saw an advertisement in the paper, in the local press and journal, Artemis technician required, trainee, must have electronic experience, and I had no idea what an Artemis was, but I had the electronic experience, so I applied and took the job and went off and started setting up Artemis systems for the dive boats, mostly platform based. Obviously the mobile end was on the vessel, but we were going out to the platforms and setting up Artemis, which was a range and bearing system at the early point of, before other sensors took over, maybe DGPS and laser based systems, etc. So that's what I started off was with DPS. Spent 17 years at DPS, moved into sales, started at DPS in 93, moved into sales about 98, got an opportunity to be the sales guy and go knocking some doors and just cause it a little bit of trouble. And what I realized very early on when I was at DPS is that we were very focused on a set bunch of equipment, but going out and talking to clients at the time, like Racal Survey and Fugro UDI, etc. They used us, but they were going to larger companies for a wider range of sensors. So that became a very interesting and probably the most exciting time of my career was working at DPS when, we not just went out and found business, we evolved the business, spread out, grew the inventory and products and services available for rental and sale, and expanded globally with agents, not setting up our own businesses overseas, but partners, set up a partner company in the US, Singapore, etc. And I was with that business until 2010. which was 2 years, just post 2 years after it had been sold, and decided it was time to get out, and did my first ever stint of garden leave before setting off on a new adventure, which was actually acquiring a business, living in Aberdeen, but acquired a business in Great Yarmouth called Sonar Equipment Services, SES, which again, small business, 50-50 rental and sales, a little bit of internal technology, and a lot of agency stuff as well, with a view of platform and how can we grow this business. And the nice part of that business was that it had R&D capability and an ability to maybe make some products that differentiated us from what a lot of people see as a rental business, a company that's just shifting boxes. So we brought the technology piece into our rental business.
And Scott, you mentioned it was a small business. Can you give us a flavour for the size, number of people, sort of financials back at the time?
If I remember, it was circa 22 employees. It was on average probably run about 2 million turnover business per year.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So quite a small business, but in a niche. And you mentioned too, Scott, the challenge of starting a business or acquiring and growing a business with a young family. What were the other major challenges that you came across? Because starting a business like this is no mean feat, right?
Well, I think that the alternatives were to start from scratch. And I think that although I was comfortable that I had a network, starting from scratch, you're starting from base level, no turnover. So day one, you're going to bring some money in, but you're also, taking on cost from day one as well. Whereas, finding Sonar, what we knew was there was a core base there to build from. So from day one, going in, doing the acquisition, we had turnover, we had sales, we had customers, we were running, and I felt quite confident knowing the rental business that there was a few things we could bring in to add to that business very quickly that would attract new customers in and historic relationships. But yeah, I mean, it was, tough on the basis that I had a large young family. It was tough on the basis that, the wife was having to cover a lot of bases whilst I was spending typically every Sunday, sometimes Monday. I'd go down to Yarmouth and maybe come back on a Thursday, but also often come back on a Friday. Weekends were very fast as it is, as we know, with young kids. You're running around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And also as well, we're ramping up a service business. So you've always got the phone and you've always got the email. And typically in those early years, life was early mornings, first thing, alarm going, or the kids waking you up, looking at the phone, looking at the emails, and just juggling all the balls. But I'm quite a high energy, or certainly was in my younger years, a high energy person. And rentals of this type of business has really suited me because it's 100 miles an hour. And you're juggling a lot of balls, you're multitasking, but that actually has worked quite well for me. That drives me on, or did drive me on.
Great. And, Scott, the subsea sector is high stake, high tech, and often high cost. How did you convince people to rent instead of buy?
Yeah, customers. What I've found with customers is we've got a lot of different types of customers, and some customers rental is the only option. I find with the bigger groups, they go through phases that they'll say we're never renting again. We're spending too much money on rental, but when they hit a downturn, they look at their business and say, right, what's necessary, what's essential in this business, and often they look at the workshop that services their own equipment, and they're carrying quite an overhead there, and that's often the first casualty. And of course, the next problem is once they don't have the people to service and maintain their own equipment, they're very slow to look after their kit, and in some cases they don't. And the market that we support in subsea rentals is very much today the boat's doing X, tomorrow it's doing this. There might be a failure of their own equipment, or a client says, we want you to do something different. They need a specific tool for the job they don't have. They turn to their workshop. They might have one. It might be away for service. So the natural route is to turn to the rental company. The rental company is obliged and must have serviced equipment ready to go with the latest certification and calibration cert. And that could go out on a 5-day job, a 10-day job, or a 180-day job. So I think there's dynamics in the market that turn the client to rentals. All clients will at some point say we're not going to rent again, but the cost of ownership and the time and the dynamics of the market mean that they're not always ready, or they don't always have the resource to support their own assets. And again, I think with clients, I would always say is that when they're looking at CapEx, what are you doing? We're running boats, we're running ROVs. Put your money into that. You're acquiring data. Put your money into your software systems, etc. The peripheral tools that they require for, maybe 30 days, every 180 days, rent that equipment.
That's right. And I always found that just because you need the tools and sensors on one job doesn't mean you're necessarily going to need them on the second job. So.
And 100%, and that's why rental makes sense. And for a rental company, you can get good utilization over several clients through a period of time, through a year. As an actual client owning the equipment, you may find that you do a geophysical survey once a year for 30 days. Why own that equipment? Yeah.
And what were the key strategies and decisions that you made along the way that helped drive the growth of the business?
I think, being in rentals for a long time, Subsea Rentals, and we talk about technology and technology moving on, etc. But when you look at the work a client does is, what we have learned over the years is that there is a defined set of kit, equipment and requirements that come back over and over again. So you need to have the availability of the core equipment that clients want day in, day out. And then you have to be strategic or opportunist or be a bit more innovative over certain capex decisions, over certain products at certain times can become key winners for you. And sometimes you're just very, very lucky and it all works. And other times you'll speculate on new technology that never goes anywhere or takes a long time for the market to come on board and then take it out. So you just have to blend those risks and opportunities, and I would say I sometimes think I've been very lucky, but you have to put yourself in there, is what I always say, and then you have to weigh up the risks, and you have to have a go at it.
Scott, in a conservative market, how easy or difficult was it then to start a new rental business? Because surely everybody had their own supply chains in place already.
Yeah, I think where I learned about where the challenges were going to be was probably in my early days of sales at DPS. DPS was very well known for renting and supplying Artemis systems and some other peripheral sensors, subsea transponders, mini beacons, and mechanical gyros, but it wasn't known for the wider spreads of equipment. And in the early days of going out and selling, I think that's where I really faced the hard challenges of going in to see some clients. And some clients that I knew the projects and the operations managers for, because I'd worked offshore for them, and they were very welcoming, come in and see us, tell us what you've got. And they were very quick to tell me as well is that DPS didn't offer an expanded range of equipment, and they had historical relationships with other suppliers that fulfilled their larger needs. Of course, I walked away from that and thought, right, well, how do we expand this business and prove that we can offer a wider variety of equipment and over a period of time? And I'm thinking from early days of sales, 98 through until probably 2008 when the business was sold to Triton Group, it's exactly what we did. Moving on to sonar equipment, I was fortunate, and I remember that my sales and operations manager said to me about a year in, maybe even 6 months in, he said, you told me this is what we're going to do. And I actually thought, well, let's see. He goes, but everything you've said we're going to do, we've done. And I goes, yeah, but I'm very fortunate that we did all this at DPS, and every day was a new day at DPS. And here at sonar equipment, the route we're taking, I've done all this before. And again, at sonar equipment, I was fortunate as well because I had a client network. I had a little bit of a reputation. Some people seem to want to do business with me. And some of the clients were coming to us and saying, hey, we can't get these. Scott, what can you do? And we helped them out. But the business was different as well because DPS was in Aberdeen. And I think if you look at that 2000 mark through until 2008, even 2010 when I left, there was a lot of global subsea projects that required a lot of LBL equipment, West Africa, Gulf of Mexico, etc. And DPS was right in the middle of being one of probably 2-3 main suppliers for that type of equipment. Going down to sonar equipment, it was really nice to be out of Aberdeen and actually getting into the business. And probably the view was that within the first 6 months, I'd have an office in Aberdeen. But actually, when we got down to sonar equipment, and we were already supplying some of the very early wind farms with geophysical equipment and some niche packages like our likes of the power cable system and their Sea Spider or Sea Bug drop camera system. And actually, it wasn't going into sonar equipment late 2011. It was 2017 until we opened the Aberdeen office, which was expected to be a lot earlier than that. But the reason being was that the renewables market was growing, and we were right in the middle of it. Yarmouth was a great location to support where the wind farms were, both off of England, the coast of England, but also the continental ones as well. And we took off and we grew. We chased that, didn't necessarily chase the market. We're in that market, and we're seen as a niche supplier for equipment and services in there. And I think early 2012, I bought a batch of LBL transponders, and I don't think I bought any more for about 5 years.
Scott, it's interesting that you mention luck, experience, and your network as being important factors. Now, it's always struck me that logistics, maintenance, and availability are big challenges in any rental business as well. How did you manage those, and how did you manage to keep customers happy faced with these things?
High level juggling, I think, if I'm honest with you. The client's impression of a rental business is that you're doing nothing until they call up, and you don't have any other customers, and you've got lots and lots of kit on the shelf ready to go. The one thing a client will always say to me, how can we help you, Scott, in our relationship? And I'll always say, give me as much notice as possible, because typically in the rental business, when you get a phone call from a client, the thing you're always thinking is, when the client's on the phone, have I got it? When do they need it? And yeah, you have to get to that point in the conversation. What you don't want to do is put any doubt in your client's mind that you maybe can't help them until you've had the conversation, you've gone off and worked it out.
Yeah.
And often when clients call you, it's the most important thing. It's very urgent, and then you discover it's just a tender, and you never hear from them again. But yeah.
Yeah, but I guess, from a client's perspective, following through on your word is probably the most important thing there, right? And
Clients, what I'll always say with the rental business is that clients contact you, you have to get back to them very, very quickly, because our clients, sometimes the rental equipment can be the most important part of the deliverable on the boat. The sensor's got to work. It's got to record the data. Their job is about acquiring the data, processing and delivering the data. But if the sensor doesn't work, they can't sell the days for the boat. For us, what I'd always say is we'll have to be ready. I always looked at equipment coming back in off a hire, and I'd say to the guys, I don't know when it's going to go out again, but I know it will. And we don't want to be that business. The client calls up and says, have you got X? And I say, yeah, we've got it here. Just came back from hire. We'll get it ready for you, and it'll be ready in 2 weeks' time. Equipment just has to be ready to go. It's a call-off business. You do things, and again, sometimes, and in a previous life, I was in a business, I was questioned about having calibrated equipment on the shelf when the market was slow, and that was late 2009, early 2010, the credit crunch downturn had hit the rental pool with a lot of equipment on the shelves. And what I said to my VP at the point that time was, yeah, but we know this market's going to pick up in the spring, and we just have to be ready to go because it's all going to go out. And I think that was the one time I've probably seen the most equipment on a shelf in a rental business. But my view has always been, personally as a private business, how I run my business is, my kit, even though it might cost me a reasonable bit of money to get service calibrated, often clients damage equipment. You have conversations with them about who's liable for that damage. Clients never want to pay, even though they maybe dragged a sonar through a thruster. They'll always tell you that, they never took the equipment out of the box. But my view would always be is that I'd always get if we could repair the equipment, even if we've got discussions ongoing with the client about who's liable for the cost, I'd always tell my guys to get the kit fixed and get it on the shelf, because it's no good to me if it's not ready to go. And often you do get that phone call last minute. Have you got? Can you move it? And I think that where we won was always being ready. But I think the rental's a simple game, and you just have to keep it simple. And it's about having good, clean equipment that's calibrated and certified and ready to go. And ultimately, for a rental business, our clients got a lot of problems and issues, or not problems and issues, but bigger concerns, i.e. their client dealing with crew, getting a vessel operational, getting personnel to man the job, acquiring, processing and delivering data. And we just have to be, we don't want to create any noise for our client. When the client calls, you have solid conversations with them over what they want, understand their challenges and difficulties, make some recommendations, and then deliver a good service and just keep it as clean and simple as possible. And the problems the client might have on a project, not with our equipment and service. And that way you build up trust, you build up relationship, and ultimately, a number of customers would automatically, you'd always be their first choice. Differentiators between businesses in the sector, I say one of the big differentiators is always going to be cost, price, the best price. But sometimes if you can deliver the best service, clients will be willing, in some cases, not even to go to the competition, just come to you and call off the equipment.
Yeah, and of course, I was actually a client of STR. And one thing that always impressed me, Scott, when you were building that business was you were based in Great Yarmouth. However, you would visit and offer to visit very regularly. You were very much in front of the customers. How big a factor do you think that was in your growth?
It's a difficult one, because sometimes I feel that we weren't enough, but sometimes too much is unbearable for clients as well. And it's just trying to strike the right balance. And you got to be visible. You got to build a relationship. But then it's like the football team. You can have the best bunch of players, but if you perform like Man United, and I wouldn't say Man United's got the best bunch of players. Let's say Man City have nearly got the best bunch of players, but they're not performing on the park right now. And I think that for me, I never wanted to be in front of clients having awkward conversations about poor performance. Yeah. And I think it's always easier to get in front of people when you're confident in the service that you deliver. Whether it's a new client, we know we can do a good job for you. And there were certain clients over the years that we took that, would probably challenge us on price and commercial terms before doing business. But once actually we delivered a job, we locked them down pretty quickly, and we grew with them, they grew with us, etc. And that was very satisfying for myself. And ultimately, barriers to growing the business. We've always had much bigger competition that can spend more money. And where I say is that where you compete on the park, A1 performance. You can grow your business off the back of that. And I look at, you go to a good restaurant, you go to a good bar, whatever, and the service is absolutely spot on. And I see supporting the subsea market with rentals has not been any different to that. You listen to the client, you serve the client, you don't leave the client waiting around for answers, etc. You're efficient, and that's where you have to be as a rental business.
And thinking about some of those challenges, you mentioned earlier on, there have been some massive disruptions in global supply chains over the last few years. How did the business address those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting time, because I think that it all came about around COVID. And I think that initially, when COVID came in, I remember January, February in 2020, we were really shaping up for a really good year. 2019 had been excellent. And we started off very quickly, and then the COVID came in and everything flattened very quickly. Although I think renewables started to move quicker, probably into May, June. And then our subsea inspection FMD services, all of a sudden, from talking with clients and then telling us that there was nothing happening, all of a sudden everything happened. And then the markets coming through COVID, it just really seemed to bounce, and get very, very busy as well. And obviously then there was supply chain issues driven by COVID. If I recall as well, there was a semiconductor factory in China that burnt down and caused lots of problems as well. And we had two sides of the business that we had to deal with there, because we're buying our third-party equipment from established suppliers, so they had their supply chain. And then we also had our in-house R&D side, which we had delivery targets for products as well. Certainly on the internal side, I know that our R&D team had to really look at their supply chain, had to come up with alternatives quickly. In some cases, had to re-engineer circuit boards and, to new components found from different suppliers. But then we had to, re-engineer PCB boards to go out to the PCB suppliers, etc. It was very challenging. I think that probably having to plan further ahead, look at our data, the history of what we're renting out, what the demands are for the clients, and plan much further ahead. So, if I look at the manufacturing side of the business, we're probably sitting in June. If I take, for example, June 2021, we're probably planning in June for what we're looking to have coming through production Q1 the following year. And again, you're looking at data, but you're also there's a bit of guesswork there. There's a bit of luck, etc. as well. But again, I think we defined certainly in our own product line what our key products were and where the demands were and where the shortages were. So it just pushed you to be more upfront in your planning, a bit more bold, and having to speculate a bit more. But confidence was the market was strong. And I think even when we look at moving into 2022 and what happened with Russia, Ukraine, etc. as well, and energy security becoming a big thing, and general oil and gas, maybe in some respects, stepping ahead again in our business on renewables, it was about just getting that planning up front as much as you can. Good dialogue with customers, understanding what they've got, what's coming up, and clients in some cases maybe like to hold that information, but you have to say to them, guys, how we help you is with you telling us what you got in the pipeline, what's coming through, being upfront, because we want to support you. We don't want to let you down, but you have to let us know what you've got coming up.
Okay, so Scott, you mentioned that the business started as SES in Great Yarmouth and you moved it up into Aberdeen as well. And you also mentioned that at DPS you grew internationally through agency agreements. Is that the strategy you took with STR as well?
Again, learning curve. I think, it's quite a jump to, certainly as a private business, to expand globally, internationally. But what I felt with working with agents, and it worked well, but I guess it comes down to a little bit of control. When you're working with partnerships with other people, there can be tensions, there can be restrictions, and again, what was the business? It was equipment rental, and it was, have we got it here and available now? And I think that what I felt very much with the agency business was that their frustration with the parent would always be, well, we can't get access to the assets because you guys are always pulling them back and putting them out in work. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily different when you grow an international business of your own as well. But ultimately, ultimately you're investing in yourself, your own assets. I mean, I guess as well, when you're working with agents, you're splitting the check with them. And again, you want to, in a rental business, you want to bring the capital, your earnings back in, and you want to reinvest them into the assets and grow. So it makes sense to do it yourself. I think the challenge internationally, certainly for myself, was that I've got two sites in the UK. I think 2019 we technically opened in Singapore, or 2018 Singapore and Perth, Australia. And we were already doing business in the US. I think we registered our business in the US during COVID. We didn't move into facility until into early 2022, just when the company had been acquired, but we were going down that route. We had challenges with the US because of COVID. We're working there. We didn't have any personnel there. We had assets there with one major customer right at the front of COVID turned around to us and said, we're going to demob your kit off the boat. We're going to give you 30 days to calibrate, service, maintain it. And then get it back out the vessel. And of course, the person who was running the US came and said, what are we going to do, Scott? So I thought about my mate, Chris Tarrant, and called a friend and said, what you doing? And he said, yeah, I'm not doing much right now. I goes, can you help me? And he said, yeah. I goes, what do you need? I goes, I need a truck. I need a facility. I need people. And through one of my contacts, he pulled some rabbits out the hat. Took the kit off the boat, and we got it turned around with a lot of support of our UK business over the internet, etc. But using some guys locally to service, maintain the equipment. and that was that relationship was key to growing the US business as well. So it was really important to keep that client happy. So yeah, I mean, having to be quite dynamic in a rental business, especially a young business, a small business, your larger competitors, and think out the hat and have a little bit of luck as well
Okay.
to make it work.
So when you exited, then you had operations in Great Yarmouth, Aberdeen, Houston, Singapore, and Perth. Is that right?
So by the end of 2020, we were Aberdeen, Great Yarmouth, Singapore, and Perth. And by early 2022, we'd added Houston to that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you give us a feel for the size of STR when you exited?
We'd taken that business to circa just short of 20 million turnover.
Okay.
So it was, in some cases it could have been faster, but it didn't feel slow when we were in there. Looking back at it, it seems longer than it actually was. But we paced it. We enjoyed it as well. It's probably in a phase of my life that I wasn't in a hurry to exit, although probably it was part of the plan. But ultimately, it was. I think we're having fun. We're enjoying it as well, and I think it's when I look back at it, I did enjoy it. And I look back at DPS. I really enjoyed my time at DPS and the early days in Great Yarmouth at STR. I always liked to be the underdog a little bit as well. So I used to enjoy coming to the trade shows, Oceanology, Ocean Business, Subsea Expo, and chatting to the competitors and them pushing me around a little bit, etc. But that was all part of the fun.
So Scott, you took the business from 2 million to 20 million, so 10 times growth. How many years was that?
So that was between really start of 2012 and we exited at the start of 22. Yeah, so I think you're looking at 10 years.
10
Yeah.
times in 10 years. That's a pretty good batting average.
Yeah, yeah.
And what did the exit look like for you?
In what respect? That's quite a wide question.
That's why I thought I would ask it that way. Can you tell us what the business sold for?
I'll keep those numbers to myself. But to be honest with you, I can't quite remember exactly. I've just been doing a lot of shredding. I think I've shredded all the documents and stuff. But no, we're growing a healthy EBITDA.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges when you spread internationally as well is just maintaining that overhead, and and managing expectations of staff, employees, etc. as well, and keeping it all in the right place. I think that you ultimately taking the business, and I'm probably going to answer a question before you ask a question, but I think that we got to a stage at STR that I never wanted to be a standstill lifestyle business. I also felt as well in Subsea Rentals that if you said, let's have a year off from investing in the business, you probably go 3 years backwards. And certainly when we were expanding internationally, globally, demand was growing. What we did it well. I remember my first employee in Singapore actually approached me in a trade show, and a former colleague of his had asked him for a reference because he was interviewing with us to be our first employee. And the guy said, he's my friend. He goes, I really like him. He goes, but I think I should be your first employee. And he goes, and what people say about STR is that you guys have the best. It was a little bit like the guy with the shaver. You guys have the best equipment. He goes, and I want to work for the company that has the best equipment. But the challenge was is that we're well received. We made good appointments, with our Asia VP, etc. as well. Good connections long term in the market there. Nice, likable people that people want to do business with a company with a good reputation. And I'd always say with a rental business, you have to keep feeding the beast. And we were certainly creating a beast that needed a lot of feeding, i.e. capital, CapEx. And we got to a stage where I felt that to take the business to the next level and, in a marketplace, I never thought we could be the biggest, but I think we could be the second biggest. But ultimately we'd be the biggest or the best as far as reputation of what we deliver. But I think it got to a stage that it needed availability of a larger amount of cash to take it to the next level. And with my advisors, worked very closely with Gordon Steele and the guys at Anderson Brown through acquiring sonar equipment to exiting Subsea Technologies and Rentals. And I think every year we sat down and we talked about the business, and the business was in a prime position. And especially because at that point around exit, probably 60 to 70% of our turnover was non-oil and gas, mostly renewables, some subsea telecom clients. And where investors were, certainly private equity investors at that point, they all wanted to invest in the green dollar. And we had a very compelling story that we were supporting the renewables market, successful rental business with technology element, private equity like technology as well. And it was just, timing was just right. The pressure of the business to feed the beast, more capital, but ultimately the story around the business was very compelling to private equity. And it was 10 years, so getting on for 10 years. And in my mind, I had set targets of time, I'd set targets of turnover, I'd set targets of EBITDA, and we're pretty much reaching all those benchmarks. I think also through my time in industry through the 90s, all the way up to 2020 and beyond, though I'd been through a few downturns. I think I've been quite lucky through those hiccups in the market, but I had seen some business owners, private business owners, really struggle, grow a business, and then be hit hard, and then struggle, and maybe clinging on to what they had maybe when they were into their 60s, etc. And I just felt that I'd never wanted to be that person as well. And so I think it was we're in a good place in the business. The business wanted more capital. It was really ready for it. The customers were knocking on the door. One major client in early 21 turned us down in a frame agreement, didn't deem us to be big enough. And I said to them, because I think you're making a mistake. I think you'll be back at the door. And by early mid 2022, they were hammering on the door. I knew where we were going. So yeah, timing, right time, etc. Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Get lost.
So Scott, in the next section, I'd like to chat about the exit and what lessons that you've learned through that. So let's consider the exit. When did you first start considering selling the business?
Well, I think, through the journey, we'd worked very closely with Anderson Brown and with Gordon Steele, our corporate finance advisors, and they did many other things for us as well, tax, etc., and advising on the international setups and expansion of the business. But in my mind, I'd always had 10 years as the time that I could probably do and want to do. I had experience through my time in the industry, working with other businesses and seeing other businesses, how some businesses are growing well, but maybe downturns and had a negative impact on the business and the ownership. And recovering from that was very challenging, certainly with some owners that maybe were into or getting into their 60s. And okay, I'm not that old, but I felt I didn't want to be that owner as well. And I think that, just talking with our advisors, the progress the business was making, a very positive progress. We had a compelling narrative. At 2019, probably 60 to 70% of our business was in renewables or supporting renewables or other industries outside oil and gas. And private equity were certainly interested in how do we get into offshore wind. So we were supporting that market and more profitable business. And ultimately, we were well received in our international growth. We were always being asked to do more in the Aberdeen market. And as a rental business, how do you do that? You've got traction, you're motoring, you need more assets, it's capital. And I think that everything added up to it's time now to start talking to investors. Never wanted to sell to a competitor, personally, myself, but finding the right partner, private equity, to help us on the next step of growth was definitely the route to go. So we had probably, if I look at July, maybe post-summer, September 2019, we chatted with our advisor, and we agreed that we could start to look at options. And we had some, I think they call it coffee chats with certain interested parties, with a view of is that we'd get into things a little bit more after we completed 2019, finalised our accounts, etc., and got moving into 2020. And then obviously February, March, COVID came in. And it changed things, and we went into that position of first thing you got to do is protect the business, put a number of people on furlough, Fortunately, business turned around May time. It was like COVID never happened, although we were all working very differently. And probably by June, July, most of the people we'd put on furlough were back in business, and we were actually recruiting, interviewing and employing people over Teams meetings, which was very alien.
Great.
And again, so, when we got to probably September 2020, it was a conversation probably over a Teams call with our advisors, and then we're back on track. And yeah, I think probably some of the very early conversations with potential interested parties probably started. Well, I remember one actually started in a Marks and Spencer's in Aberdeen when I was buying a sandwich at lunchtime, and I ran into somebody who says, "I need to talk to you."
It's a valuable sandwich.
Yeah. So that there was the growth and the path of the business, and I think what I'd always say about myself as well is being realistic, and knowing myself that it's the right time to look at this. Yeah.
And Scott, it must have been quite a culture change for the business, moving from a privately owned business to one that's private equity backed.
Yeah, I think for myself, excuse the dog, for myself, I knew what to expect. I think, the chairman at STR said to me, "Are you surprised about what's gone on and what's going on?" I said, "Not at all. Everything you guys have done, I knew you were going to do, and what you wanted to do." I think for myself as a former owner, investor, but going to be exiting at some point fully from the business, I was I knew the process and how it would all work. I knew what was expected. The challenge could be with members of staff, and it's trying to explain to them that now we've got different ownership. The rules of the game are going to change, and I think you need to understand those rules, and then you have to make decisions yourself of, is this a game that I still want to play, or do I need to go play somewhere else where the rules suit me better and how I want to live my working life? It's very challenging, and it's very challenging for myself as well, because you build up really good relationships with people, and they like the way you work and they like dealing with you. Some people want to work very closely with that guy that runs his private business and be close. And when there's a change, they don't like that change. But I think that I think that when I look at the people that worked with me prior to exit, I think that I gave everybody a really good runway, whether it was to remain in the business or whether they wanted to take up what they'd learned, what they'd seen, what they'd been involved in, and take that somewhere else. So I think I'd like to think that the majority of people that came through STR have grown and have built the opportunity to go on to the next thing.
So it's a challenge then So it's a challenge then for the management team to adapt to the private equity involvement. What's the key to keeping the management team engaged during that process?
That's difficult, because people are motivated by different things. Some people like the challenge of the day to day, dealing with clients. Some people are motivated by, well, what's in it for me, and am I going to get a slice of this, etc. So it's understanding what challenges people, and some people you can meet those expectations, and other people you can't. And I know through my time as managing and owning and running the business, and there were some people, good people, would come to you and this is what I want, and you have to actually sometimes step back and say, I appreciate that, but we can't do that for you. And if that's what you want, I'm not going to stand in your way. You need to go off and find your next opportunity. And I think I always come back to saying is that you be realistic, and what I have seen, when you have different management come into a business as well, we see different things and they want different things from people. Things that I got from people that were really important to me, did the right things for where we're going as a business. Private equity is different in a lot of the drivers in the business and what they want, and that can affect the type of people that come in that fit that model. So, yeah, I would always say I could take a very realistic view of it. Maybe easy where I sat as in leaving my business, that I could take that realistic view. For other individuals, they would maybe find that, well, I don't think Scott's getting the point now, but Scott's not the leader anymore.
Actually, Scott, that's one question I didn't ask, is how big was the company in terms of number of people when you exited?
Oh, my word. I should have done my research, but you should have asked that question. I could have done my research. I think we were somewhere between 65 to 75 heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I left STR at the back end of 2024, I think we were somewhere just short of maybe 120 people, something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Scott, in the next section, I'd like to find out a little bit more about what's next for you and what you see as being next for subsea innovation in general. So, in general terms, then, now that you've moved on from the business that you founded and grew, what's next? You don't seem to be the type for, or rather, I know you're not the type for twiddling your thumbs. What's the plan? Are you taking a break, investing, planning something new?
I think, I think that I'm very conscious that I just can't sit at home and look out the window, and that I'll probably grow quite old quite quickly and maybe become a bit senile, etc. On the other side of it, I think that I probably raced into, right, I want to play more golf, I want to do more travel, lots of things. And then actually I wasn't doing anything because I'd set too many things up that I wanted to do that I couldn't get any quality. So I think it's just trying to find, it's certainly the challenge with me is that I like to be busy. My wife will tell me to slow down. Why are you running all the time? But that's probably why, and I don't like to say I've been successful, but it probably is why I've been successful, that I can take a lot on board, I can process a lot, I can rumble a lot, I can juggle a lot of balls, but I'm getting older as well, and you can only do that for so long. But ultimately, business-wise, hey, I've exited my business, so obviously I'm in a position that I can't go back and do what I was doing for a number of years, and I don't necessarily want to do that. I certainly don't want to be the guy at the top of a business. And in some cases, I think that in those circumstances, I'll get lost in it and I'll probably drive it and push it on a little bit more than I want to. And I don't need that because ultimately I sold STR because I wanted to go and do some things in life, spend more family time, play a little bit of sport, do more travel, all these kind of things. You can't be doing that when you're running a business. But I've looked at a few opportunities. I've obviously had a few headhunters contact me, etc. But I joined a group of investor group in Edinburgh called Apollo that look at investing in SEIS investments. So small investments. They do a quarterly pitch with potential investors like Dragon's Den. If you sit around, you listen to the pitch, you meet the people, but from a diverse backgrounds and industries outside of subsea, which is really nice because I've always thought I know this subsea business, but what else is out there, and is there more exciting stuff or just interesting stuff? So Apollo's been interesting for the short period of time I've been involved. We're talking with people, that are selling sportswear, some cancer cures, some domestic wind turbines, etc. So very, very diverse, but keeps me fresh, keeps me thinking. Hear other people's opinions, etc. as well, which is good, because there's always an education process there as well. So I think it's about balance. It's about still trying to find some interests, business interests, but nothing that's going to absorb me. But keep my mind active, and just getting on with some of the things that in my teens and 20s I used to do that I stopped doing through having family and running a business, and getting back and spending a bit more time out on my bike and playing a little bit of golf and getting time to walk my wife's 8 dogs.
8 dogs.
8 dogs, yeah. It's
And
a lot of legs to walk.
Scott, you did say that you've got a large family. How many
Yeah.
kids have you got?
5 kids.
Five kids and 8 dogs.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 kids and 8 dogs. Like to be busy.
Sure. Scott,
We did have a TV as well. So anyway, moving on.
Scott, if you were starting a new business in the subsea sector today, what would you do differently?
Always the question to ask. I mean, if we're like for like, and the type of business that we were in previously, there's not a lot of change. I think that probably being, I think what I have learned, and when we acquired sonar equipment, and I guess the advisors were saying, and it was always going to be about an exit at some point, but never really thought about it that hard. But I would say now to anybody that's starting a business, why are you doing it? And I never like to say is I was looking to grow a business to sell a business. And you never really want to say too much of that to your staff as well. You want to get them to love it and focus and work hard and all these things as well. But you do have to think about what does it look like with success in 3 to 5 to 7 to exit or sooner. We're getting the thumbs up again. You do have to you do have to think about exit, and if I was involved again, or really anything involved with, I think that exit is something that you really have to think about. How am I shaping this? What's my expectations? Where's my realistic point of saying that I've got it to where I want to look at either a full or a part exit, etc. I think that, I think something I don't like saying is, but I do like to win. And I think that business transactions and growing a business, the first thing is I'm in there to win. I'm in there to get the jobs, to grow the business and have a little bit of fun with the competitors and make them feel that I'm competing with them, even if I'm not. They're a lot bigger. But in my mind, you have to build up that competitive edge. But I think you also have to think about being realistic as well. And I've seen businesses that have maybe gone to that excellent point. It's time to do something now. And they've thought, now we could go a bit more. And then the market changes and they go backwards. So I think you have to be realistic, and with a view of is that at some point you need to step aside, step back, or invite somebody else in to help you go forward to the next step.
Okay. And Scott, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in subsea technology in general for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not going to talk about specific equipment, but I think that it's all about data, isn't it? And I think that we've got existing oil and gas infrastructure out there, and again, I've been more the equipment supplier, not really the guy on the boat doing the job. Although I did do a little bit of that when I first came into the industry back in the day. But I think if I look at the oil and gas, there's a lot of aging infrastructure out there. I look at things that we did with our FMD system as well, and always going on to older installations, uncertainty over drawings and information and these things. So I think infrastructure, data, integrity. I think that in offshore wind, a lot of infrastructure going in, managing it. I think that, we've now got security issues, with offshore wind and subsea telecoms. So I think it's the ability for their clients to understand the clients, let's say our clients, but our clients, their infrastructure, the operators. And it's technology packages, whether it be out in a boat to do a job or installed long-term sensing technologies that allow the clients to understand the integrity of their infrastructure. Because right now, we need the oil and gas flowing, we need the gas flowing, we need the wind farms turning and the electricity being made. And if anything goes down, whether it's an anchor going through a cable or etc., we need to know about it quickly, and how our clients and their clients can go out and repair it quickly. So it's high-end sensors, but also how they acquire, process, deliver, and read the data to know what's going on out there.
Great. And just for clarity, if anybody's uncertain, the FMD is flooded member detection. So that's used for... Go on.
Yeah, and that was a product that we developed in-house with our R&D team worked very closely with a specialist that had worked in the field, flooded member detection, basically using cesium source radiation to detect whether the members on an offshore installation are flooded or dry. So a lot of old infrastructure out there. It's critical to know the integrity of the platform, and a lot of the platforms in the fields, the clients will annually survey them, and they're looking for changes in the infrastructure there.
Great. So, Scott, I think I know what you're going to say here, but let's find out. So for entrepreneurs looking to build and exit a company in this industry, What's your number one piece of advice?
Keep it simple. Understand, what am I looking to do? What do the clients need from me? So, I think it's just keeping it simple, understanding your clients, understanding what they want. I mean, from a rental perspective, it's always keep it simple. You, you're not the most important thing until they really need you. And that very little period of time, you have to do things very, very well, keep them happy, move on to the next thing. I think that, in any business as well, it is about financial security within the business, and it's looking at, your revenue lines and making sure that you've got good, strong lines of revenue. And from my perspective, you've got good, strong lines of revenue. It gives you a basis to grow the business to the next level.
Brilliant. And Scott, you mentioned that you're investing through Apollo.
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with Apollo? How do people follow what you're up to, get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, although I think should I have some maybe my own website or do more on LinkedIn, but yeah, I've got a LinkedIn account, so you can reach me through LinkedIn. As far as getting involved in Apollo, they meet once a quarter. You can email in directly to Apollo and pitch to them if you're maybe looking for investment. I believe that you can come along. I think we've got a meeting next week, and I've been told that I can bring a friend. So, buddy, if you want to come along and experience it yourself, it's quite local to where you live, but you can come along, you can listen. They are looking for people to come in and be additional investors. I think there's a few slots there available right now, but they're always looking as well for entrepreneurs to come and pitch to them and what they've got and what they're looking for. So yeah, reach out to myself and I can introduce you to the people at Apollo, or go onto the website and contact them from there.
Brilliant. So, Scott, thank you for joining the Ocean Tech Sessions today. It's been brilliant to hear about you setting up STR, moving from 2 million revenues through to 20 million revenues, growing the team from 22 to 70 plus staff, and from one base to several in multiple countries. It's been really interesting to understand those challenges and how you see those opportunities. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Murray. I really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to seeing the end output.
Great. So for the listeners and viewers out there, if you'd like to see any of our other content, then take a look at the LinkedIn feed, and of course that's the best place. We'll link all of the Ocean Tech sessions from there. And I'd like to point out that this episode has been brought to you by Aquatech Group, providers of subsea wireless instrumentation. So thank you to our sponsors, Aquatech Group, for making this possible. And Scott, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.